Hey there. Welcome to the Cropster podcast, where we discuss all things coffee and tech with industry leaders. I'm Nick Castellano, here with my co-host and a founder of Cropster, Norbert Niederhauser. In our first episode, we'll introduce ourselves to you and discuss Cropster's origins to becoming a tech leader in coffee. Cropster has grown from a producer solution to a cloud-based solution from origin to cafe since Cropster's beginnings. Norbert brings an insightful and deep knowledge of what can be achieved. Norbert, we're finally here doing this Cropster podcast. I'm stoked. How's everything going?
Fantastic, Nick. Thank you. Thanks for setting this up. So I'm very, very happy to be here and super excited.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be talking about some different crazy stuff about coffee and tech, and it's going to be really exciting to not just speak with you, but speak with different industry leaders and get everybody's thoughts on how our industry can progress and how we implement technologies, and it's going to be really exciting. To kind of start things off, I think a lot of people would be interested in learning a little bit about us, about Cropster. So I wanted to hear your story, your version of just how you got into coffee, why you started Cropster, why you chose to bring Cropster into the coffee industry. I know I've heard a little bit about it, but I'm sure our viewers would enjoy listening to your perspective as well, which would be nice.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you. Well, that's it's a huge question. How did it all happen? It clearly happened, and I don't know where did it really start. If I go back many years ago, that would be when I was, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. I went to church, and back then we sold fair trade coffee at the church door, and the coffee came from Nicaragua.
Oh, nice.
So it's that was like one of my first relationships with coffee, and understanding that there's people very far away who need our help and our support.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. And another personal thing was, of course, my dad always had a cup of coffee after lunch. That was like his ritual. And I never understood really why he would do that. And especially when you're little, it's like it's those things where no, you cannot get a coffee, but yes, your dad always religiously has one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it was that was interesting, but so I didn't give it really much more thought. That's why I think that the church door fair trade coffee experience is the more impactful to me, as I learned, as I said, there's people from far and distant lands. I grew up in Austria, so Austria,
Mm-hmm.
Nicaragua, different cultures, different languages, and really far apart. But still, this sense and feeling, we need to help and we need to connect,
Yep.
and I wanted to connect. That was very exciting.
Okay.
So after that experience, I grew up and I did an technical high school, and then I did some social work for 5 years in Austria, and then I went back to
Nice.
university to study information and communication engineering, basically programming databases and those things. Um, and so I always had this drive to connect and uh, improve the world or make the world a better place in a certain
Mm-hmm.
sense. With social work, it's very immediate. You work with people and you get a response, and you see if what works and what doesn't work. I mean, it also takes a little bit of while, and sometimes you don't know what impact you have or had. I still have people now, I don't know, 30 years later, sometimes connecting and saying, "Hey, this was really important for me, what we did back then." Or so it's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool."
Yeah.
I had no idea, or I was not aware that it had such an impact.
Yeah.
Um, and with technology, I find it was a little bit harder because it's more removed from people's lives, potentially, in a
Mm.
way that's like, well, you get the data, you don't get the data. It's not a, oh, this new platform makes my life so much better. Well, in the end,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe it does, but it most technology is built to make current processes easier.
Mm.
So instead of driving to the supermarket, I can order online, and that there's a shift
Instacart,
in.
DoorDash, yeah, that kinda thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So, well,
okay.
food and goods and anything really.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a shift towards technology. Now I can even like look at stuff in augmented reality. How would look a certain furniture piece in my living room.
Mm.
It's pretty
Yeah, that's
exciting.
true. Yeah.
But I still, in some things, I still a little bit old school. I like to touch materials. I like to know, like, how does it actually really look like? But
Yeah, that's just the human experience, though.
I know, right? But
Yeah,
there, a
yeah,
lot of people already go for the digital experience, and
yeah,
that's
that's true.
also I'm also gravitating in some aspects towards that, as I feel not everything I need to touch, not everything I need to know. Certain things
Mhm.
are standard, or I trust the system where I give them some answers and let them choose what is best for me. And if they don't disappoint me, I'm coming back. Like I feel like they know me enough to deliver what I want.
Yep.
So circling back to university, I was studying IT, and I like in mid through the studies, I wasn't sure what to do afterwards. It's like I don't want to work in a huge company optimizing a process which is already optimized. I don't want it to become part of a huge team where that one person doesn't matter so much.
Mhm.
And also, I didn't feel like I want to create something very abstract. I wanted to do something more immediate.
Mm, okay.
And one of my professors had this ideas like, yeah, well, do an internship and have some contacts into developing countries. And that was the connection to the church door. It's like, oh, there's a developing country, and they might need me. And
Yeah,
I don't have to commit for life. I can go for 6 months and see what is up. What can I do? And that's how my life really always kind of developed. It it always presented opportunities, which then led to the next opportunity. And I think all those steps here, like this, the doing social work, it was not really a deviation. It was all enriching the bigger picture.
mhm.
So I went to Colombia to a research center. It's
Nice.
the Center of International Tropical Agriculture.
Okay,
And I started building databases for climate data, basically. So they
okay,
had they had terabytes of data lying on hard drives. We're speaking of 2003, almost 20 years ago. So that time, internet did exist, but it was slow. Servers did exist, but not at the capacity. So it was expensive to host gigabyte or terabytes of materials.
mhm.
And since the networks were still quite slow, it was sometimes faster to use external hard drives to transport information.
Yeah,
But it all also developed super rapid, and every year we saw huge changes. So I started putting things onto server, helping the local research community get better access to information, um, be more efficient.
mhm.
And then I was invited to take part in a test pilot study for a bigger research grant, link under the big topic linking farmers to markets.
Okay,
So the idea was, how can we help smallhold farmers to be sustainable, make a livelihood, and thrive.
okay, nice.
And that in a world where smallhold farmers would be always very poor and have less access and less availability of anything,
Mhm.
or less connection. And that was super exciting. So I went to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
small farmers, and we selected as the research, let's say the research topics, we selected high value crops:
Okay,
coffee, cacao, tropical fruits, nuts, honey. Those are typical products which
Yeah.
can generate higher value or higher prices on national as well as international markets,
Okay, nice.
especially international markets.
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
100%.
but now we can also see that that also works in national markets. So specialty coffee is not a thing of only the United States anymore.
That's
It
true.
also it has its market in Brazil, in Colombia, in Mexico, in the producing countries,
Absolutely.
which is an absolute joy to see. Yeah. So I moved to Colombia, totally ignorant of the language. I never thought I never considered myself uh, a language person. I was told in school that was not my forte. My English grades were really bad,
And now you speak it
constantly.
perfectly.
It's not perfect as you can hear, but I get by, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, no, what I so I arrived in Cali, Colombia, and realized immediately, man, the and I want well, I want to connect, right?
Mhm.
So this is the important thing. I always wanted to connect with people
Yeah.
more than anything. This was not about a big business idea. This was not about, oh, I want to get rich, or I want certain influence. I just wanted to connect. I wanted to be with people, and to be with them, I just needed to learn Spanish. And
That's true.
that was super, super interesting for me personally to see that suddenly I had a different motivation from just passing the test or passing the exam with a certain grade.
Mhm.
The test was, can I get connection?
So there
And
you
that
go.
connection was, yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
that connection was working with limited vocabulary. It was working with bad grammar. It was working with like really the bare bones. And from that, there was more motivation to learn more,
Yep.
to get more into it, improve. Because the better I spoke, the better that connection
Yeah.
was.
That's true.
And that was fascinating for me personally to learn uh, what motivation. If the right motivation is in place, you can do a lot of things which I personally thought was not my thing. So that was one thing, and the other one was like it opened this huge field of there's all the small farmers, there's the coffee market out there. I mean, that was almost 20 years, or well 15 years after my church door experience, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, this is how coffee farms look like, this is how they live, this is what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was not in Nicaragua, but well, I also traveled to Nicaragua quite a bit later on.
Yeah.
But that was such a like connection. Also, it connected my old Norbert with my back then newer Norbert,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like, wow, I learned about coffee. I learned about agriculture. I grew up in an agriculture community in Austria with about, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 inhabitants.
Okay.
Very small,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
One of my best friends was just from the farm next door. I knew how the pigs lived, and the cows, and how to. I was always happy in summer to go over when my friend, I don't know, I'm maybe 12 years old, and he was just say, "Hey, up on the tractor, we are mowing some pasture right now." It's like, great,
There you
let's
go.
do it. But it was always I had no idea.
Yeah.
I really had no idea how agriculture like is the basis of our food system.
Yeah, literally.
And I know. So it's so it amazes me because we always think like, oh, it must be someone from a huge city who has no idea.
Yeah.
But no, this is me growing up in a small farming community, not really connecting the dots correctly, being
Mhm.
removed, going to school, and and that's where the Colombian experience really connected me to all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I I did it not as a social worker. I did this as an IT professional.
Okay. That's right.
So
That's right.
I finally saw kind of a little bit a light at the end of the tunnel of to my question of like, what will I do with my IT knowledge. I also, when I was a social worker, the first thing I got, and that was, we're talking about 96, so cell phones just barely arrived.
Okay.
And it's like, I had a cell phone.
Was it
Nobody else.
that big Motorola one?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Nokia was big
or
at
no,
that
okay, there we go.
you know, but same thing. Yeah, Motorola, Nokia, I think were the two brands.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then I also bought a laptop, which was outrageously expensive, but so helpful when you travel around and have your data organized. I had all my clients and my contacts data there. I could easily make a mailing. Back then, we wouldn't do emailing lists. We had
Mm.
mailing lists, so actually addresses. We are printing on a sticker and putting it on an envelope. But all this like helped me do my work better.
Yeah,
So I always saw technology is just fascinating to get access to data, to be organized, to be more efficient in what you do.
yep.
It was never really never about the, oh, I can have data because of the data.
Okay.
I got a little bit sucked in sometimes. Maybe maybe we all did at some point. We wanted to organize our CD collection, and then we typed it into lists. But we knew exactly where those CDs were anyway, and what the songs were on those CDs. I never was really searching for them.
Yeah,
Um, that all was different, or is different now, where we don't have the physical goods in our hands anymore. So our brain works differently. Now I need a search function in my iTunes or in my,
yeah,
to find certain things.
yeah.
So back to that. So I was in Colombia. There were farmers. They needed connection to international markets. We were on the brink of cell phone connection for most parts, or it was developing.
Mhm.
At least internet cafes, even in smaller communities, were already established. So we saw the future.
Yeah.
I was like, let's well, we wrote this project grant. It was approved, and it was a 3 years project linking farmers of specialty agricultural products to international markets to help them improve their livelihoods and create sustainability.
Okay, nice.
Super nice.
Yeah.
So we went out to the field, we talked to farmers, we did all kinds of projects, testing new interfaces, testing devices. It was more limited than now. The hardware wasn't there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But the concepts, the ideas, they were already there in our heads, and so and then of course it was research. So we researched, we wrote publications, we wrote books, um, and after 3 years, I learned a lot. I got a lot of connection, but I also saw that there is, for me personally, there was a limitation in research. It's two things. One is, I did not really want to do my PhD. If you work in an international research center, this is kind of what you do,
Yep,
right? You
yep,
get the highest level of education.
yeah.
And they were super nice about it and had great connections to outrageously good universities. And it's like, Norbert, you can go here, you can go there. We have all those links, and you can study there. Like, it's that's probably not for me.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one thing. And another thing is, it always changes focus.
Okay.
So as I mentioned already, I'm a relationship guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
uh, so I moved to the fields, or well, I visited the farmers. I didn't move there. I visited the farmers, and that created relationships. And
Definitely.
I wanted to further them and keep them.
Okay.
And in those projects, that was not always possible, especially in international research. That even basically after those 3 years, they said, yeah, we would fund another phase, but in Africa
Mm.
or in Indonesia. And it's like, we just built those great relationships here, and we are not done. And done in a way, it's like it's not. Yes, we did the research maybe was done, but the implementation was not done.
It wasn't effective yet, right?
It wasn't working yet.
Yeah,
Exactly. It
yeah,
was it was like the theoretical knowledge was there, but the practical implementation, and still, honestly, after 15 years, we're still not there.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the sad part, but also the exciting part. That's why we are here.
Yep.
to work every day on that dream, on that concept.
Okay.
So so I basically decided, hey, my time in the research community, and I spent 5 years at CIAT, at the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. After 5 years, it was just time to do something else.
Yeah.
And there, I was extremely lucky um, to meet Martin.
Yep.
He studied at the same university in Austria and was there in Colombia doing his internship in my project, or
Hmm.
in our project. So I met Martin and I knew how his outrageously good technical skills. And then, of course, I knew Andreas, the other co-founder of Cropster, and he's a friend from university. We studied together.
Nice.
He stayed in Austria, worked at a software company there, and got really, really well skilled and experienced in software development too. And
Nice.
he was
Okay.
always intrigued by what we do with farmers, and like being out there and coffee and all that was exciting. So he decided to take a sabbatical, come to Colombia for 10 months and work with me.
Nice.
So ultimately, Andreas, Martin, and me, we all worked in the same project, and then we realized that the end is near to that project. So we thought, well, we could take over the technical part and create a system,
Hmm.
really focus on the technology, not on the research, and that create that system which keeps the farmers. And we had about 3,500 farmers in the database, which
Wow.
keeps the farmers and the exporters and the importers and the coffee buyers connected.
Yep.
So the version 0.01, what we hacked together in tireless hours with 20 different students, and I don't know, I did a lot of programming myself back then, which was not at all at the same level with Martin and then Andreas, but I know the basics, so I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
get away with it.
It's more than me, let me tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
I,
Nick,
g- I g-
we will drill into your life in just a bit. So we might discover very interesting things there.
maybe.
No, anyway, story short, we got together, we sat down, and said, "Hey, let's do a platform." That was the time of internet-based platforms, 2007. We found the name Cropster, decided on it, and said, let's do this as an enterprise. We got a little bit of business advice from some friends, and we put down a very, very slim and small budget, a few $1,000,
Nice.
and got going.
That's
That was kind of the lead up story to where I come from, and
yeah.
how Cropster kind of
Nice.
came about and started, and
Yeah, no,
a
that's I
lot of
mean,
things changed since
that's
then.
super interesting. Like, it's just I mean, every startup has their own unique, motivating, interesting story. And like for you being Austrian starting in Colombia, like, yeah, that's so good. I love it. I love hearing because just something totally different. Yeah, I'm really happy that from when that started and now where Cropster is now, like it's motivating to see for sure.
Yeah. But Nick, so shifting gears a little bit, I know, of course, working together, knowing you a little bit, you also have your Colombian connections,
Absolutely.
through personal connections and professional connections, and so I would also like to hear a little bit more about your story, how, how
Yeah.
how you got into coffee, and all that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sort of like you, I'm very into the human connection. Like the relationships are very important to me. And I think and this goes to my story as well. I developed that at a very young age. My parents grew up in I would say lower to middle class neighborhoods of LA. So they raised me to be very humane, very connected to people, very connected to culture. They took me to where they grew up, and from where I grew up versus where they grew up, it was when I first saw those neighborhoods, it was a culture shock, but I adapted quickly and I learned that there's so much outside of my bubble. And as I grew up, I always had it in the back of my mind. So when I turned a teenager, I was really into cycling, and that kind of exposed me to travel and then more cultures, new cultures. And coffee was always a part of that lifestyle, that cycling lifestyle. We always go for coffee rides, new coffee shops in this city and that city, and I always go with different friends and whatnot. Uh, but during my time cycling, I was a teenager and I just still didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Like I just wanted to be a professional cyclist in Europe, and that was that. Fast forward, I went to college. I studied political science and economics, and then that as well exposed me to different, you know, cultures and learning about different like global politics and how culture influences all that. And I was always fascinated by that. And during that time, I had stopped cycling, but I kept traveling a lot. Traveled throughout Europe, Southeast Asia, and then during my trip to Southeast Asia, I visited Bali, Indonesia, and I tried this really interesting and unique, and I would say controversial coffee, kopi luwak. And at the time, I knew what specialty coffee was, but I didn't know how controversial this coffee was, and I was just naive and thought, "Oh my gosh, this coffee is amazing. This is so good. It's so smooth. Like, why don't we drink this in the States?" So I had this crazy idea to, well, you know what? I'm finishing college. I got to start thinking about my career. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just sell coffee in the States. Like, I love coffee. I love traveling. This is everything I want to do. So, and easier said than done, right? So I, so I returned to the States. This is now 28, and this is 2018. Finished
Mhm,
college. I think I was like 20, 21 years old. Finished college. Tried to sell this kopi luwak. Had it roasted in Indonesia by someone I met down there, and I realized quickly this is a very expensive, very niche market, and it would not be a this would not be the core of a, I would say, a good business model.
mhm,
So I took a step backwards and I said, okay, I need to learn the basics of this industry. And my girlfriend, she's Colombian, so I decided,
mhm.
okay, well, I have a home in Colombia uh, with my girlfriend's family, and I decided to pack
Yeah.
up and leave to Colombia for 3 months to start from scratch, learn everything I need to know about trading specialty coffee. And similar to like you, I grew up in a Latin Latino household, but I was very stubborn when I was little, so I didn't want to speak Spanish. But it wasn't until I grew up and I was like, oh man, I wish I would have spoke more Spanish. So going to Colombia, that trip, I understood a little bit of Spanish, but it was more towards like the Mexican accent and some Spanish accents.
Mhm.
So going and listening and trying to maneuver the way people from Medellin speak, where her family's from, they speak very paisa. I had a learning curve of relearning Spanish as well. So I went there not
Mhm.
knowing anything, not really knowing much Spanish, and then after that 3 months, I came back speaking super paisa and super different, and it was interesting.
Full full immersion.
It was literally full immersion because nobody spoke English. And if I wanted to learn coffee, like I wasn't just gonna learn at the local cafes or the roasters because that's something I could do here in the States. I wanted to go to the
Mhm,
farms. I wanted to go down to the seed and understand from seed to cup what is coffee.
mhm.
And I did that. So I went to Colombia, and prior to my trip, I went to the Colombian consulate in Beverly Hills in LA, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna go to Colombia to buy coffee. Where do I start?" Because I had no idea where I was starting.
That's too cool.
And they're like, "Okay, here's a contact. This person can help you out, and she'll take it from there." I'm like, "All right, cool." So I got in touch with her. I ended up in touch with a person. I ended up scheduling a week in the Eje Cafetero in Armenia, Manizales, Pereira, where a lot of the trading and I would say bulk of coffee is grown. I wouldn't say all the specialty coffee is grown there because I personally think Huila, Nariño, Sierra Nevada, Santa Marta, that is where I think some of the highest quality coffee is produced. But I was able to experience during a week in the Eje Cafetero from seed to cup by visiting farms, visiting exporters,
Yeah.
meeting roasters, and going to cafes. What and how coffee moves, and that week was just like eye opening, mind boggling, and it
Mhm.
really opened my eyes up to the coffee industry, its flaws
Yeah.
and its future, and that really motivated me seeing disparities in the industry, but also seeing the potential that some of these producers have and the markets they could reach, and that motivated me to do more and be more involved and try to make an impact on these people that produce coffee because I feel like I felt like the knowledge here in the States of the person that produces the coffee was nowhere where it should be. And especially
Mhm.
we drink this beverage 3, 4, 5 times a day and know little about the person who actually produced it. Because without that
Yeah,
person, we don't have coffee.
yeah.
And a lot of us live by coffee. So finished the trip in Colombia, returned to the States, and I tried my first project, which was selling roasted and origin coffee. That
Mhm,
was not the biggest success. I put down some money that I learned from a loss, and that's just how it goes. That's just how it goes when you try to do your own thing. So then this is now pre-pandemic. This is like throughout 2019. Then I decided, okay, well, let's go for more traditional model, and I tried to import green coffee. Did a little
yeah.
bit of that. Learned a lot about the importing side and how to get it to roasters. But the reality was like I didn't have millions of dollars in capital, let alone thousands of dollars in capital I didn't have. And I was trying to do this thing, this model that required a ton of capital for it to be profitable.
Mhm,
And I was having a very,
mhm,
very hard time. And I was learning at the very least. It was an experience. Then, unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and that kind of just threw everything out the window. Like the pandemic hit, everybody shut down. And what I was doing obviously required the sales to roasters, and that just shut
yeah.
down. And from there, I kind of had to reevaluate. Okay, I want to be in coffee. What do I need to do? And then I started freelancing. Wrote a lot for different coffee publications, and that still allowed me to be exposed to knowledge in coffee, learn about coffee, and in any way I can put myself in different uh, positions to get experience, whether it was interviews
Mhm,
for articles or just speaking to people or going into, you know, different virtual webinars throughout the pandemic. And throughout the pandemic, I learned a ton more about coffee that I didn't know before. And now, as we ended the pandemic, I found an opportunity with Cropster, and now I'm here, and
yeah.
I'm loving it. I'm loving every second. And yeah, that's kind of
Say
that's kind of my journey, like going from zero to from nothing to now, working and being a part of a well-respected establishment. It's been an interesting journey, but I still have so much more to learn, and nowhere, obviously, you're not nowhere near the journey you have, but I hope, I can continue to keep learning
then
every
I'll
day.
give it another 10, 15 years, and you are where I am. So it's not a you got to start, and I
Yeah,
think your story is fantastic. Just to it shows that hey, I want to do some stuff. I what's the odds? I mean, you contact the consulate, of course, you know someone, but
yeah,
you know you found good people, and that's to me the interesting thing in coffee. Somehow this is like a family. This is a huge group of connected people, and
yeah,
um, I felt from day one I felt lucky to be in that industry
yeah,
versus another industry.
yeah, yeah,
This is really especially in the specialty coffee, but in general in coffee, it's just decent people. It's nice people. They all there's a lot of connection
mhm,
to be made. There's a lot of help out there. So I experienced so many fantastic collaborations where it's not always about the immediate uh, about any immediate gains
yeah,
for someone. It's more about like, well, he needs help, so I know I see roasters opening their doors to their peers, to their I mean, in other industries, you would refer to them not as peers but competitors,
yeah, yeah,
and they'll say, "Oh, this is my peers," and it's like, and he doesn't know how to roast that specific coffee. It's like, well, come over and let's show you how I do,
yeah, yeah.
and so that's amazing,
And
right? Or
that's one thing that I love about, like, specialty coffee. One thing that attracted me was this, like, when I'm working, I put quotes around this because it doesn't feel like I'm working, because coffee already is like this communal hobby, and
Mhm,
everybody in this particular niche, like, wants to make an impact. And so, yeah, I'm working and I do my day to day in the coffee industry, but it doesn't feel like it because, like, we all have one common goal of making a positive impact, and everybody's together trying to do the similar thing. And for me, that's really motivating, and that's why I wake up early, and
yeah.
do what I do.
That and working with Austria 9 hours ahead, it just requires you to get up
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
morning.
that too. That's just a part
Same
the
here
nature
for
of
me.
it.
I had to get into that into that swing of things too, but it's good.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, it's great, and
Mm,
there's a huge future, I think, um, for this and what we do, and I mean, and honestly, speaking of the future, I kind of want to, as we start to wrap up the first episode, I want to get your thoughts, and just general question, but in your view, in your eyes, what is the future of tech's involvement in coffee?
mhm.
That's a loaded question, and we could probably spend multiple episodes on this, but I think it would set us up really well to some conversations to
I
come.
actually look very much forward to spend multiple episodes on that. The question is huge. You're right. I think technology, and that's why I give you a fairly general answer too. I think technology is just a thing in which exists in all areas of life now.
Mhm.
It always has, and it always kind of will, and it's changing more rapidly as digital technology evolves, and as networks evolve, and those things.
Yeah.
So I think it's not a question of like, will technology be in a certain area?
Okay.
It's more like, how will a technology form a certain area?
Mhm.
How will technology form the coffee industry? What will become, or what are interesting tools, positive tools? What are things which might not work so well when we look at technology, or what are potential, downfalls or shortcomings? So those to me are the very interesting questions.
Yeah.
So as I said in the beginning, technology to me is always kind of a means to an end,
Okay.
um, as it has, and it can help us tremendously.
Yeah.
We've seen that. I mean, through so many areas of our lives before the internet, how we would do things. Again, you might be a little bit young, but I lived a life without a cell phone. I lived a life without the internet. I lived a life without computer. And then when I was 14, 15, everything changed.
Mhm.
I got my first computer. I was 18, 19, my first cell phone. I was 20 and I was connected to the internet pretty much from that time on all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, that changes the routines, but it gives us opportunities. And even the change in cell phone from my first iPhone to what's possible now is tremendous. And we don't have to look back very long. This
Mhm.
this really only is 10 years. The
Yeah.
last 10 years, everything went mobile.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I was not sure when I got see just a small episode, and then I let everybody go. But eh, we programmed an app for the first iPhone. The iPhone came out, and then months later, 2 months later, we had the first cupping app programmed.
Oh, nice.
And believe it or not, nobody liked it, and it didn't work because it was too cumbersome. It was too disconnected. It was and nobody was ready. And I think two things: humans were not ready to look at information which was just smaller presented on a screen. They were still comparing a lot with paper. And like, no, but on paper I can see this bigger, and on paper I can mark side notes and da da
Yeah.
da.
Yeah.
And the technology also wasn't ready. It was too slow. The
Okay.
processors were too slow. The interface was too slow. The touch experience was still different from what it's now.
Okay.
And those are exciting things for me to see. So yes, after this first attempt, we kind of thought like, oh, this will never work. That's not true. We
Yeah.
just didn't. It was not the right time.
Yeah,
So
that's
we
true.
brought that cupping app back later, a few years later, and now it works very well. It's super well accepted. And the acceptance rates are every month basically improving as more and more people are trying it and
Mm,
using it. And
nice.
then suddenly realize, yes, this is actually nice. This is actually easy. And now I don't need paper anymore.
Yeah, you don't lose that. You
And
don't lose paper. You don't lose the like you do paper.
exactly. And there's so many benefits. And now, when I first started to travel, I was holding on to my ticket like it was gold. Like, this is your paper ticket. This is like the most important document you can have. And it kind of was, because if you would lose your paper ticket, it was like, I don't know what you would have done. You would have lost your flight, or lost your flight, or
Yeah, literally.
I don't know, get a replacement somehow. Now I just need my last name and a booking code, or basically just my name and my ID, and it's all in the systems. It's all good, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I I don't know. I cannot think back when I printed my last ticket. Years ago, years ago, and now it's all on my mobile phone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of things I can't even imagine. I honestly couldn't imagine life without Google. I mean, yeah, there's encyclopedias and there's dictionaries and stuff, but it's just like
Absolutely,
it's just
absolutely.
like, I don't know. You can't imagine without it.
No,
That's
same here. And again, as I said, I know that life. I was very excited. I was about 10 years old, and I think my parents got us a big lexicon, and I don't know, 20 books with all kinds. I mean, basically Wikipedia.
Yeah, yeah.
so it's all that information, but less, of course, less accurate information, or less up to date information. But you could look stuff up.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to go back into that time. Not for that aspect.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Do I like to switch off my phone? Yes, absolutely, and I do that frequently.
absolutely.
Or do I, there's this, those are for me the more important conversations. How do we use technology? How do we implement certain things, and not if or not? Because I think that question is kind of answered.
Yeah,
Yes, technology will be there, but let's form it and let's make it useful.
there you go. That's a perfect way to that's a perfect end to it for sure. Um, no, Norbert, I appreciate you shedding some light on all this, sharing some insights on the beginnings of Cropster. That's super interesting, and yeah, I'm stoked for some future episodes to come, and I hope you are as well.
Yes, absolutely. No, I look forward. This is cool. Nick, thanks for setting everything up. And yeah, I look forward to chat with you very soon about that.
Awesome. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cropster Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe to our channel to always get the latest episode. If you're interested in more educational content on all things coffee and tech, be sure to head to cropster.com/learn or visit our YouTube channel. Cheers to more coffee.